Captain Beefheart fans were the people who had even been rejected by the hippies, the people who were too weird for the hippies. In fact, Captain Beefheart and the Magic Band came and played in Portland, Oregon, my hometown, in 1970. They played at the Paramount Theater, gigantic theater. All 75 of the weirdest of the weirdos of Portland, Oregon showed up. There's one guy that had a helmet on with a light bulb that went on and off on his head, you know, and we all thought we were weird. Everybody tried to dress weird and, you know, all that stuff. So we went in, we sat there, you know, we filled up the first 3 rows of the theater, and the lights dimmed, and Ed Marimba came out, one of the drummers, and he stood there in this long cape, and of course he looked weirder than any of us in the crowd, and he held out a little toy children's ray gun, and he pulled the trigger, and he went vzz, 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 as he said, ray gun, vzz, vzz, Ronnie Ray Gun, vzz, vzz. And then he went over and sat at the drum set, and Drumbo came out on the other side of the stage, and they did this big drum duet, and then the whole band came out and completely blew us away.
A squid eating dough in a polyethylene bag is fast and bulbous. Got me?
Like the Beatles and the Beach Boys around the same time, Captain Beefheart now embarked on his most ambitious and complex work, Trout Mask Replica.
Light on Vermont, affected everybody, even Mrs. Wooden Willis.
In this house, the band spent 8 grueling months learning difficult parts under somewhat trying conditions.
There was no album contract in the beginning with Frank. Frank agreed to give Don total artistic freedom if he came up with an album. There was no money being sent by Frank, and we were basically not eating too well. It was kind of a very lean time. I remember almost a solid month of having nothing but a little tiny cup full of soybeans every day as my meal. That was my only meal. It was very sort of, I felt like one of those Eastern mystics.
Fast and bulbous. That's right, the mascara snake. Fast and bulbous. Also a tin teardrop. Bulbous also tapered. That's right.
I used to hang out with those guys. I lived in Woodland Hills, and so did Don. Had the house in Woodland Hills with the Magic Band that was doing the album. And it was pretty strange. Those guys weren't allowed to leave the house. Once a week, one guy, member of the band, got to leave to go get groceries. And they were in that house for, I think, about 8 months, rehearsing Trout Mask Replica.
This was a transition because musically, this is probably the most important point to make, is this is where Don got a piano. So everything was written on piano, so I started writing the music down, which limited Don because he couldn't play endlessly for hours. He'd just have to play one little thing. Give me enough time to write it down. He'd have to play it a few times so I could get it right. And then my assignment was to take these parts and give them to the right players. And at first he kind of told me, like, this is the bass part. I think the first thing he wrote was Dalley's Car. But he'd tell me, this is the bass part, this is the guitar, this is the other guitar. And after a while, I just stopped doing that. And I'd say, well, who do you want to play what? And he'd say, well, you know what to do.
This track, Pasuko Cadaver, has been censored by WMT. This track, Pasuko Cadaver, has been censored by WMT. This track, Pasuko Cadaver, has been censored by WMT.
I've written every drum bit I've ever done, every note.
I play the drums. I play the guitar. I play the piano. I want it exactly the way I want it. Exactly. Any composer, I would think, would want it that way. And I don't deviate at all. Don't you think that somebody like Stravinsky, for instance, don't you think that it would annoy him if somebody bent a note the wrong way?
Don tried to create an atmosphere where we were almost living this album. It was like we didn't have a private life. We were on stage anytime he was in the room. It was sort of like there was always a kind of a tension to where we had to be enthusiastic. We had to act as though we were really, you know, excited about this, and that's hard to keep up for a year.
How do you teach these musicians to play your music?
Whip. Kind whip. No, I mean, a kind quip. A kind, well, how? You know, a tape, you know, with the piano, a tape, and it's very hard work, and they'll probably all leave after I say this, but they don't get enough money.